All right, so we will start the meeting and be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by Councilwoman Adeline Rudolph.
I brought a flag. So I pledge allegiance to the
To
flag
the
of
flag
the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Jean, would you be able to call the roll?
Certainly. Councilman Gary Davis.
Present.
Somebody took my screen away. Hold on.
Doug.
It's okay. There we are. Councilwoman Karen DeMay.
Present.
Councilman Terry Fennelly.
Present.
Councilwoman Adeline Rudolph.
Present.
Supervisor Jared Simpson.
Present.
Thank you.
All right, Jean, was the meeting properly advertised?
Yes, it was.
All right. Now, so Doug, if you want to, I won't yell at you this time. If you want to go ahead and share the agenda, I'm down to, I only have one monitor right now. And I can't pull it up on my other iPad. All right, so we do have a privilege of the floor before we start our priority business. If anyone would like to be heard, just raise your hand and you will have time to speak. Just be patient while we try to get through and see everybody if there's anybody out there. I'm not able to see everyone, so if anybody's...
I don't see anybody, Supervisor.
Okay. All right, well, this brings us to our priority business, which is a specially called workshop regarding the Canandaigua-Farmington Water District and the proposed water tank project. We do have representatives from MRB here. We also have Supervisor Inglesby with us tonight, so welcome, Supervisor. So I will go ahead. We'll go ahead and begin the workshop with any questions or comments or thoughts that people have. I know that we did have information. There's a project tab that was shared with us that is on the town website with more detailed information and the history. So I will open the floor to any comments or questions from board members regarding the project.
I've got a bunch of questions, but I don't know if you want me to go first.
Go ahead. I figure we can do this fairly informally. It's a round robin, and we can ask the questions. And you know, I know Greg's up. You know, Greg's out there, Pete's out there. If they have answers for them, or if they don't, this will be a good opportunity to some of the questions that we might have. And then we will be having our follow-up meeting Monday with the resolution as the item on the agenda for our special meeting on Monday. So tonight, no items on the agenda, just information gathering.
Okay, so I can start with something. I've got really specific questions. I'm sorry, I apologize ahead of time. The first one is not as much as a question as much as just a recommendation. We need really better and final figures for the anticipated tax rate for the next 5 years. And I'd love an explanation of more clearly why the previous figures were $1.25 and why they now are 92 cents for 2027, which comes back to this, the large plan that you gave us, where I have more specific questions. So the first one is, I don't see any reason to be, if we're going to go forward with this, I don't see a reason to be reducing the tax rate in 2023. It's got the 2022 tax rate on this worksheet as 85.28 cents and the 2023 tax rate as 81.63 cents. I would think it would make sense to keep that either the same or raise it to help ameliorate the problem going forward. The second question I had is related to some of the averages that are in this workbook. If you look through it, they're kind of confusing and I'm not sure what was going on with the computing. So if everybody turns to the pages that says expenses, which is that second page there, it says 5-year projection and expenses. If you go down, some of them are really kind of odd. Like if you go to the transportation and distribution CE, it's probably about a third of the way down. That's got like this 5-year average that's $256,000 approximately. And then you have going forward, you've got an estimate of 150,000 for 2023, 190,000 for 2024. It just seems odd that we would go down so much from the 5-year average in your calculations. And that kind of the same thing happening three rows beneath that, where there's a 5-year average of $30,509, and then the 2023 budget is for 5,000. The 2024 budget is for 7,000, and it just seems I'd like either an explanation of why, if there was some sort of an anomaly as to why we're going so much below the average there, or I'm not understanding why we're computing it in that manner for those two. And then do you want to keep going through the rest of my questions, or stop in between?
Well,
Yeah, let's pause and turn some time to Pete, to Supervisor Inglesby, to kind of break down some of these questions.
Okay.
All right, so the 8340.4 Transportation District CE.
Yeah.
That is actual expenses in the past years, okay?
Uh-huh.
But you can see there's some that were down to $112,000 and some that were way up.
I'm just wondering why we're
20
guessing so much lower, than like last year's budget's 260, or the 2022 budget's 260, and it's got 2023, $100,000 less than that. So
it's I believe it's the money that we plan on spending for the materials over, there's a line for meters just below that.
yeah.
And this is like the money for pipe and valves and that type of stuff.
So you're projecting that to be lower, even with the costs that have gone up for materials?
Well, in 260 is the big number. The 150, I don't have my budget book in front of me, but
yeah, it's 260. You've got it projected out 260 in 2022, 150 in 2023,
right.
190 in 2024, etc. It just seems like a pretty significant amount, 110,000. But so that one kind of stuck out to me, as did 3 rows below that, which is that PRV contractual one.
Yep.
It was 30,000, and then for the 5-year average, and then dropped to 5 for 2023. I guess I'm just a little concerned that I'm concerned about how this might affect the final tax rate figures if we're estimating everything so much lower than the 5-year averages.
Right. So the 20,000 figure is an overall maintenance of the PRV valves and some money that we know we have to swap out. The lower figures is that we do that like every few years. So the lower figures is just having the technician come in and reset the gauges, make sure the vaults are working correctly and like that. But the big year was, you see, in 2020 and 2019, we actually installed a couple of meter vaults. And then in our 2022 budget, we have money in there because they've been inspected and we know we've got to have some work on it.
Okay.
The lower figures are normally, it's just the maintenance side of it, to
Okay.
have the technician come in.
Well, that makes sense for that number anyway, then.
Yeah, I'll research the 8340.4.
Yeah. That's the one that was a little more concerning. It's a lot bigger number too there, obviously. The other thing I would love to see on the revenues page, and I don't know if this is possible, but I would love to see on the revenues page if there was a way to just break it out instead of including all the other districts. If there was a way to break out the revenues to just the Canandaigua Farmington Consolidated Water District, so we could see. I think that would be helpful to see it, including that and taking out, all the interest of the other ones. I don't know if others would agree with that being helpful or not.
But the top ones with a separate district are just the tax
Yeah,
that is collected.
I agree with
so
that
the
line. It would be less confusing because when you look at this, everything is lumped in together, and we're concerned with Canandaigua Farmington, and all this other stuff kind of extraneous. Kind of pollutes, you're staring at this and kind of get lost in the sea of numbers.
yeah.
All right, so maybe I'm misunderstanding something. The second line down is the property tax collected in the residents in the Canandaigua Farmington Water District that's in Canandaigua.
Yes. I just
Okay.
mean the whole chart, like if all the numbers on the entire chart, it's including everything, right? It's not, when you have the revenue totals down at the bottom of the page, it's not just the, the real property tax for Canandaigua Farmington and the service charges and the, sale of equipment and scrap and all that. It's also including these little figures for the interest and all these other little water districts there. And the taxes for Andrews, Ellsworth, Fox, Hopewell, Sheldon, all
Right.
those things. I'd love to see it just kind of totaled up. I mean, I guess it's kind of there, but it gets a little difficult to wrap your brain around it in this format, is I guess what I'm saying. So then going on from that, I was just wondering why the real property tax for Canandaigua, if you go to, let's see, what page is that on? The real property tax is going down from 2022 to 2023. I was just wondering why that was calculated to be going down.
That well, the tax rate was on the budget between the revenues and the expenses. The tax rate was, scheduled to go down. You're correct, from
Yeah, the
80,
rate, I know.
80.
I was just wondering why okay, I guess
it's all in
that,
it's all in the formula up above.
yeah. Okay, and then the ARPA funds, were you intending to use completely Farmington ARPA funds or Farmington and
Yeah.
Canandaigua, or where were those ARPA funds intended to come from?
Those are all Farmington.
Okay. And then just the last question I had, in speaking to Doug, he talked about that part of the build out for this change would be building a road through an easement on a property off of Brickyard Road, between Brickyard and Canandaigua Farmington Town Line Road. And I'm just wondering who and how the costs for that road build out would be included in this project.
It's not. The
So,
road is,
yeah, if I could, I think we need to talk about all of that, but maybe let's put a pin in that conversation until later, more about the project first, because it is connected, but it's not part of this specific project. We need to have a conversation about that though tonight.
Okay. Those are my questions.
That's it, Madeline? All right,
That's
Thank
it.
you.
That's all, just a couple.
okay.
and I'll get back to you on the 8340.4.
Okay.
All right. Any other, Terry, looks like you're about ready to go.
Yeah, looking at the 5-year capital improvement plan that was included with the packet we received on Monday, the bulk of the projects there are, Farmington related rather than Canandaigua related. And, I just did kind of a rough adding them up, and it looked to me like maybe 70% plus are related to Farmington and really don't have anything to do with Canandaigua. So how that impacts the overall cost, and is one of the concerns I have. Is I guess the other concern, just a general thing, it's not a specific number related thing, is that I think the thing that disturbs me a lot is that this was dropped on us so quickly that we got to spend $13 million on this project, and yet we really didn't have a hand in doing the calculations and looking at the overall project. It was all just handed to us and sign this, let's get going. And I find that disturbing. And also going back and reading the agreement that dates back to 1961. The agreement talks more about a 50-50 partnership here, and it's hardly anything like that at all. I think that in order to move forward with anything, we need to have an updated agreement that spells out just exactly who's responsible for what. And I would prefer to see the town of Canandaigua have responsibility and authority in the town of Canandaigua up to Canandaigua Farmington Town Line Road, and Farmington to go north from that. And I think in order to move forward, we should have an agreement prior to signing off on a project of this magnitude. Now, that's not going to happen in the next 4 or 5 days. I know that. So I'm wondering whether this project should be shelved for a while, give us a chance to work that out. Yeah, the project price might go up, but is it necessary to take this project on immediately? Could we wait a year or two? Maybe prices come down, supply chain things get straightened out to a degree, prices come more in line, and it's cheaper if it's necessary at all. Over the past couple of days, I've heard a couple of ideas floated that might make it a little bit easier to provide the water that's needed for residents, as well as to provide for fire flow. I think I would like to see those researched and more fully, developed before I'm willing to sign on to anything. So that's pretty much where I stand.
Barry,
Thanks, Jerry.
Hey.
Pete?
may I have the response?
Yeah, go ahead, Pete.
So
For me?
No, Supervisor Inglesby's gonna
Oh,
speak, and then Gary, it'll be you.
Yeah,
okay,
so
thanks.
the first part of all the work on that sheet these years, yes, is in Farmington. But if you go back the last 15 years or so, a lot of the work was done in the Canandaigua Farmington Water District in roads to the town of Canandaigua. We, the first two sections of North Road, Emerson Road, all the fire hydrants have been replaced over the last 4 or 5 years, maybe a little longer. Jim can probably help me out on a couple other roads that I'm missing where the water lines were replaced. And so now as you move north, now you have the older infrastructure. One of the, we replaced a 500-600 foot section on Yerkes Road with our own crews last year as time permitted. There's more in Yerkes Road that would need to be done. On there, I have County Road 8 design and estimate that starts at 332 in County Road 8 and goes north to Town Line Road. So we want that section designed, and then future years, that's going to be another line to replace, water line to replace. There's been a lot of breaks in the Canandaigua section of County Road 8 where that water line is. And then as you get up into Farmington, you're going to see Cranberry and Dalton. It's our subdivisions. They're 1970s subdivisions where we've had water main breaks.
Yeah, but that's yours, not ours.
No, Terry, you gotta stop the yours and mine. It's the Canandaigua Farmington Water District.
I realize that. It's just a lot to have dumped on us all of a sudden, Pete. And, you know, going from 9 million to 13 million, I still have a problem. We signed off on this in 2017, 2022, and now it's $4 million more. Now that's, to me, is, you know, dragging your feet, however you want to express it.
I have no more comments. Thank you, Supervisor.
All right, Gary, do you have any comments?
Yes, you know, I have some concerns about it also, is that, you know, we need to have some documented, you know, information on it before we proceed further, I believe. And the only way we're going to get that is to, instead of having stuff sent to us just at the last minute, you know, before meetings, which I found very disturbing because it didn't give us a chance to even act on things and completely understand it before the meeting on the 31st. And so I have reservations about it too. I know each community is looking out for their own residents, but it seems so that the residents in the town of Canandaigua are, you know, going to be asked to shoulder a bigger burden, if you will, to implement this program right now. And there's no way in my mind that I could see, you know, supporting something like this if we don't have something in writing and documented, you know, what we agree to.
Supervisor
Yeah.
Inglesy, how confident are we in those projected tax rate numbers? I mean, obviously things change and you know, development will impact that immensely, but
Well, I know,
that's the
I know
big
Doug
question
is,
for me.
yeah, I mean, Doug contacted me a couple times and I provided him more information with Janine. You know, the first couple of years, 2-3 years, I think the whole 7 years is very well because we used the low assessment values. You know, some of your years, the assessments only went up 1 to 2 million. And like at a 3% from one year to the next, it probably jumped 4 million, I think it was. But as Doug explained to me, is this, you know, you build one apartment house complex, the assessed value the following year is you know, going to take a jump. And, you know, even if it's only 250 million in construction in between now and 2030, it's going to definitely keep the tax rate flat and probably lower it. You know, I mean, we'd be able to do more within the district and still have a lower tax rate.
Thank you.
Supervisor Simpson, if I
Yeah.
could just jump in for a quick second.
Go
So
ahead.
I did go line by line through the information that Supervisor Inglesby provided to you on Monday night. I went line by line through everything in terms of just looking at the project budget. I know that a couple of you are voicing concerns relative to whether it's not it's needed operations administration, but if I could just speak specifically to the budget specific for a second. So Supervisor Inglesby has said here he's showing a $1 million contribution to the project from the Canandaigua Farmington Water District's undesignated unassigned fund balance. And I know that he told me today, I was asking about the end of year fund balance for 12/31/21 is at 1.2 million. You've got the funds spent to date here, the bonding amount of 8 million, the interest rates. And then these are the debt service payments here with those projected tax rates that Councilmember Rudolph mentioned earlier. So then what I did is I went line by line through each of these projection scenarios. This first page is all of the expenses. You can see Supervisor Inglesby has included the debt service, the principal and interest from the front page into each of those calculations, 23, 24, 25, 26, and 27. There's a building reserve there. He's got quite a few of the different things. Here's the totals right here. It's about an 80-20 split, give or take. Obviously, when it comes time to the budget, as Councilmember Rudolph was saying, we probably wouldn't reduce the tax rate and keep it flat. Like I tell you guys a lot, we try to have a train instead of a roller coaster. So we would probably keep that flat. On the revenue side, I went through each of the lines. The one thing I just want to, and Supervisor Inglesby, feel free to jump in here. The one thing I just want to make sure everybody understands, metered sales, there's about a $200,000 increase over 23. And I believe those are the water fees that would be charged to the residents of the Canandaigua Farmington Water District. I think that's a combination of increased cost for the municipalities to the city of Canandaigua. Does that adjust the water rate, Supervisor Inglesby?
Yes, the water rate was $215 a thousand and $460 when they go over the threshold, the minimum threshold. And with the city of Canandaigua going up 10%, that was a 30-cent increase. So now the 2022 rates, until we actually get the final letter from the city, went up 30 cents. So it's $4.45 a thousand and $4.90 over the threshold. There is a room for revenue there, because I know in Canandaigua district, I believe you charge $4.64 a thousand.
Yeah. And then these next pages, just so everybody understands. So this is like each year at budget time, when we're working on the budget for each of our 29 special districts, we take, Supervisor Inglesby usually sends me over this sheet, and this has the number, the amount to raise. So basically he's calculating out the assessed value. It's the formula includes a percentage of that. He's figuring your total expenses, including the debt service, your total revenue for the district, splitting it out, and then he's figuring out what the deficit is, the deficit being the amount that we have to levy against the residents of the two municipalities. And that's these numbers here. And that for this past year, 2022 was 2006. So if I just flip over here, you all are very familiar with the spreadsheet that I do for you with each of our special districts. You can see here that 206,000 matches up there based on our assessed value. That was a tax rate of 85 cents per thousand, with about an average increase for the average homeowner of $27 over the previous year based on a $300,000 house. So then when I look at the out years of what Supervisor Inglesby has provided to you, the 23, you can see these numbers here, the 24, etc. I went ahead and just plugged those numbers in over here in the same spreadsheet, just to kind of give you an idea. I think Supervisor Inglesby is probably using a little bit higher percentage than I am on the assessed value. I'm pretty conservative on assessed value. I think it'll go up, but even in the out years, you're out up to $1, you're under $1 with those higher projected. The council member Rudolph asked earlier about the difference in the numbers from originally. I think part of that was because of these other revenue sources, these other total revenues that Supervisor Inglesby has now provided us, and then calculating the debt service and the split. It's just the tax rate is largely dependent on the levy and the assessment of the district. And so those are the two things that are kind of going up and down as we calculate out what that would be. Still an increase. The one thing I would say that perhaps that I would have done if I was preparing the budget for you on the expense side, I may have buffered the employment a little bit more with health insurance employees, because employment costs are going up. Supervisor Inglesby did share with me that there is a collective bargain agreement in place through 2024. And then the other thing that I might have done is just beefed up equipment just a little bit, because the costs are going up with that. But those are relatively small tweaks. Those aren't giant, especially on this level. So I think Councilmember Rudolph, to answer your question, based on what Supervisor Inglesby has provided, I think the revenue and expenses matches up, the tax rates match up. I think that the numbers are solid. In terms of the numbers, it's all the other questions that I know you guys still have. There is one other thing. Oh, I'm sorry. There is one other thing that is related to this. Supervisor Inglesby and I had a brief conversation about it, and Councilmember Rudolph just mentioned it. That property there is one issue that's not factored into this budget, and that I think we need to have a conversation about, and that is the alignment of this project goes through Dave Janeco's property, including a house that would have to be removed or bored underneath of, I believe. I think Supervisor Inglesby, you told me the project budget did include enough to do that if needed, right?
It's either in the budget bid or an alternate. I can't remember which way, but there is a fund, a dollar amount there.
If I can chime in, knowing what I know, yeah, we're not, it wouldn't be a drill under the house. I think it just has to go over under the shed, but we had planned for an alternate to drill underneath that parcel, so the house wouldn't have to necessarily be removed. That was the context of when we were
Right.
talking with Janeco, that he was going to take that down.
It would not include any necessary road building if that's something that's required.
So
I mean, we're not building a road. We if anything, we're just putting a stone path through for access for the transmission main. And then as part of the easements that were required, it's actually a water main transmission main, or sorry, trail slash water main easement. So at some point, the Auburn Trail is supposed to go through the same route.
So I wouldn't say that I agree with what Greg just provided to you. Let me explain why I have a little different opinion there, because I've had ongoing conversations with Dave Janeco about this whole thing, and this is what we're talking about. Dave Janeco actually purchased a piece of property, the property that we're referencing, for this water main, road, and trail transmission to go through, and then to go through his property up to Town Line Road. If we could just put a pin still in the road conversation and come back to that, but specifically to this house, he has said to me, I'm not removing the house. You guys have the equipment and everything, do it. If you want the house removed, you do it. That was the last conversation that I had with him. So I think that there is some expense that we need to be aware of that will directly impact this project, because let's face it, unless the water line doesn't have to go through that. Now, the other thing, I did have a conversation with the town attorney today. I think that we need to understand is Mr. Janeco has provided this easement under the auspices that the trail, the transmission line, and the road were going into this. So there's still that hanging issue out there that we have not yet finalized. So that is a indirect related to this project, is what I would say.
Can I just qualify that, Doug? Doug, I agree 100% with what you just said. That we have discussed. Doug, Greg, Jim, and I have all had conversations with the Janecos regarding these easements and regarding a road being installed, which would benefit the Janecos with all the property they own right there. But to be very clear, no agreement was ever made. There is nothing in writing to that extent to related to the road. And my understanding is that the easements were provided separate and apart from that. But it is part of the conversation, and it is something that the town has, if not planned for, has contemplated, but has not made any obligation. The town is not obligated to, but it is complicated.
The easement that apparently we have, I wasn't aware that we did. All of a sudden, that was kind of sprung on us the past few days, that there is an easement in place, because that was one of the questions, that if we still had to negotiate for that easement, that might complicate the whole project, because other issues that have arisen with Dave Janeco. But apparently we do have an easement now that I don't remember that coming through the town board at all.
You actually have several easements. One is a trail easement, one is a water easement, and I think there's some sewer drainage easements as well. They were signed by the Janecos. Various members of the Janeco family are as representatives of the various owners of the multiple parcels there. and were filed at the county clerk's office. There is no requirement in law to have the town board approve easements prior to their being recorded.
It'd be nice to know about it though, wouldn't it?
Terry, you're absolutely right. I'm not defending it. I filed them because my understanding was they needed to be filed right away for the grant. And that was, you know, that was my mistake. I thought they had been approved, and ever since Gene has actually been in charge of filing easements and has done a much better, more efficient job. This was the last easement I filed on behalf of the town, and in part, you know, Gene took it over because it made more sense, had done better. We have the easements. The easements exist. They can be used, regardless of town. You know, the town could have them expunged if you wanted to right now, but I don't see a reason to do that.
So Chris, you're saying with this, that in your opinion, the road right now is not an issue with this project?
No, I'm saying that Doug just said it's a little bit of an issue, and I jumped in to clarify that we haven't actually agreed on a legally, the town is not obligated to put a road in at this point. But that might not be Mr. Janeco's opinion.
So maybe I
Well,
can
I-
ask the engineers this, but can this project not exist with the current water line that's going to the end of Purdy Road and up to 332 and back down?
We would have to redo our alignment and probably issue a change and try to go down State Route 332. This alignment was developed over many years and a lot of involvement from both municipal sides, because particularly this alignment is part of the Auburn Trail. I believe you guys have Fisher working on this part of the trail, or like portions of this part of the trail, right, to bring it down from town line all the way down to Yerkes. So these easements were necessary for the water main and the trail. It helps facilitate a shorter route, so it saves some dollars by not going along 332. But the intent was, you know, if we have these trail and water main easements, this shortens up the project, but it also puts a trail in a reasonable location. And I think at some point the intent would be to convert these easements into actual right-of-way taking if there ever was a road in the future. But it has been looked at. There's been like a bunch of concepts and what, you know, there's a lot of different preliminary stuff that's been done for the benefit of both towns.
If Dave Janeco is not currently amenable to this whole thing because of the other issues on 364 that kind of created a problem with him, could he argue that without the road, without the entire thing being done, that none of it should be done? I mean, could he force some issue with that easement and, you know, have the easement nullified in some manner?
So off the top of my head, and I started looking at this morning, so I'm not going to tell you that, you know, for certain, but he can argue that. He very well may argue that, but these are recorded easements that were signed by the Janecos, notarized by the Janecos, and are permanent easements in favor of the town. The town has all the authority set forth in the easement. We can put a water line in there. Absolutely. So it's not, he very well may make an argument about he thought he was going to get a road in exchange for the easements. But while it was discussed, it was never agreed to. And the conversations that were had with Mr. Janeco were Doug Finch and myself, and I think Greg and Jim as well. And none of us have the authority to promise that the town's going to build a road.
So
So-
if I just jump in here for a quick second.
Okay.
So, yeah, so this goes back, as Chris was saying, many, many years. I think it was even 2015, maybe 16. Because I know the supervisor at the time was actually Pam Helming. When we started having these conversations, and I remember one of the very first meetings when we met with Dave Janeco, and I think there were representatives from Farmington there, he said, "That's fine, build me a road." And that's always been from the very beginning, that's been his response. I'll give you the easement, you build a road. Now, we can certainly talk about the benefits of the road, whether or not there should be a road. We've talked many, many times over the years about the intersection of 332 and Purdy Road. There's no traffic light there. Our residents are coming out as we build up on Brickyard Road. There's a benefit here to have Brickyard Purdy Road connect to Town Line Road to be able to use the traffic light to go north. That's always been the conversation. One of the things that we looked at early on was the creation of a special district to pay for this. And as we've looked over the years, we can create a special district for drainage, we can create a special district for lighting, but we can't create a special district specifically for the creation of a road. And that has always been the conversation from the very beginning, is that we would construct the concept being a construction of a road relative to a special district that would be paid for by the folks that live in that special district. In this particular case, it would be the properties that are owned by Janeco. He would be developing those, subdividing those off, selling those off, and then the new residents of those special districts would be paying the taxes associated with it. So and Chris Nadler, feel free to jump in here, but from everything the attorney tells me is that's all fine and well, and we can do that for the drainage, the lighting, and all that good stuff, except for the actual road construction.
Except for the thing that costs
the most.
In New York State, town roads are town expenses. And Doug and I briefly talked about this particular road. And there are definitely arguments to be made that I think are valid, that this could be of benefit to the town as a whole, not just to the residents along that road. This road has other benefits that would benefit the entire town. I don't know
It's
that.
kind of, I almost feel like we're being held hostage here. That the primary beneficiary of this would be Janeco, opening up all that land. I was in some of those conversations also, and there was never any agreement with the town, that never presented to the town board to, install a road. Conversations I remember were the road could be built, but we're not paying for it.
Right. That was the conversation when Doug and in all honesty, during the meeting, I recall, I thought this is a no-brainer because the town will essentially front the money to build the road. And then once Dave Janeco, builds the houses, those residents would assume the debt. It really was a no-brainer. It was a huge benefit to and the town wanted a road there anyway. It may have been. Yeah.
I don't remember ever asking for a road there, but.
No, I didn't say, I didn't mean wanted, but it may have been a benefit to the town. I went back after that meeting and called Doug and did this. So we, continued conversations with Mr. Janeco about other ways we could do it. And then eventually, Mr. Janeco provided the easements. I believe, Gene, I don't know if you recall, but I believe he delivered them to the town clerk's office in exchange for nothing. So while he may not like it, we have the easements. It's not an issue, but it's something that I think the town board should be aware of as something that the town may be interested in doing at some point in the future.
Okay.
We kind of got mired in the road for a little bit, even though we were going to come back from it and kind of walk away from it. We're going to leave the road there for a second. So I'm going to try to bring us back. A couple other questions I had, speaking of water. in the presentation on Monday, I can't remember if it was Bill or Greg who mentioned that the Department of Health has issues with the tank because it's not circulating enough. Is it to the situation where the Department of Health is going to say, what's the worst thing that's going to happen with them if the project stalls? What could the DOH come back and do, if anything?
They will issue a violation at some point.
So let me interject here before you answer that question, Greg, because I think it's two answers to Jared's question. And because we have some new board members, I'm going to ask you to indulge me. If you all know this, well, then play solitaire on your phones while I tell you. But there isn't one Canandaigua Farmington Water District. There are two Canandaigua Farmington Water Districts. The town board of the town of Canandaigua is the governing body of the town of Canandaigua's Canandaigua Farmington Water District, just like the town of Farmington is that for Farmington. But there's not one water district. It is operated by the town of Farmington. Both districts are jointly operated by the town of Farmington, but they are two entirely separate water districts, just like the Canandaigua Consolidated Water District is separate from, the Andrews Road Water District, or was separate. They're separate water districts. They have separate governing bodies. There was an agreement in the 1960s, an intermunicipal agreement that said we're going to operate these jointly. And the agreement expired when the debt taken on by the two water districts in the 1960s was paid off, which I assume was sometime in the 1970s or 1980s. Since then, the two water districts have continued to be operated jointly by the town of Farmington. We had a very similar situation with the town of the Canandaigua Hopewell water districts. So Greg, can you answer Supervisor Simpson's question for each water district? What will happen for the Canandaigua Farmington Water District of the town of Farmington? And what will happen for the Canandaigua Farmington Water District of the town of Canandaigua?
Well, the problems exist in zone 1, which is the Canandaigua side of Canandaigua Farmington Water, as it relates to the high fire flow demands causing the low pressures, and also the potential to thereby draw out the stagnant water in certain conditions out of that tank that's normally locked out. It would expose, it would first expose in zone 1. So if I was reading the tea leaves, looking at it, if I was the health department, I would ask Canandaigua then to correct these issues in zone 1, or Canandaigua side, Canandaigua, whatever. You get what I'm saying.
So the issue exists in the Canandaigua side?
Correct. That's where the the primary hydraulic problems exist. Zone 2 is actually because that flows into zone 3 going north. I'm sorry, I don't have the, yeah, there you go. If you scroll north, Town Line Road is kind of the edge of zone. That's the interface between zone 1 and zone 2, although Stablegate is actually fed out of zone 2 because it comes out of Farmington. Zone 3, which is the North Farmington districts, all the connection points through there all have back pressure sustaining valves. So though that Farmington district does not really have the pressure issues or to the degree that zone 1 does. And some of that has to do with the hydraulic grade line that zone 1 operates, which is at 957 feet. Zone 2 is at 860 feet, so it's about 100 feet lower. The reason why I bring this up is to understand that the 100-foot delta is that when Pactiv draws, they drop the hydraulic grade line in zone 1 by 100 feet. That is about a 50 some odd pound drop. And because that transmission line is the primary feed north, it's everything that's after that is impacted, but zone 2 is not as impacted because it's at a lower hydraulic grade line. And then they also have the back pressure sustaining valves to hold water back from going in zone 3. Zone 3 has its own tank. Not sure if did everyone kind of follow that. I do have some videos I can show you of the hydraulics that were studied by putting a whole bunch of Telog units out into the system and then brought back into the model to show you the impacts to zone 1 without the new elevated tank and then with the new elevated tanks, just so you can visually see the impact of that tank. But I would have to, can I share my screen? Okay. All right, just a second. I just not a Zoom expert here, so just trying to find the right window that I just clicked on. Here we go. All right. All right. So can everyone see this? This the green line at the top is the hydraulic grade line. Now the hydraulic grade from the city in theory is at 972, but now knowing that there's some significant fluctuations from the city tank because it's not always full. The grade line from the cities, anywhere from like 960 up to 972 roughly. So 972 being the highest hydraulic grade line you can have in the city. Zone 1 again is at the 957. So this is basically at the entry point on North Road for zone 1. So the green line is that hydraulic grade line. The red line are the various elevations in the system. And the blue lines are if you quantify this, that vertical line represents the pressure for each location. So I'm going to hit play. As we go through the time step, we just happened to, with the Telog units, we captured this. Watch the right-hand side. Boom. So we already can see that we're taking the hydraulic grade line from that 950s and we're dropping it all the way down to around the 850 mark. And we're creating areas in the system that's less than 20 PSI. We're required by health standards to keep the system pressure above 20 PSI under all flow conditions. And then 10 states, not sure if they've updated, but they say that you need under normal average and max day demands to be above 35 pounds. So let me see if I can switch over to, this would be, all right, so this is the same simulation, but with a new tank. Now pay attention to the green line. Going through the draw, that fire flow from Pactiv, we're only losing maybe 25 feet-ish or so of hydraulic grade line, and it responds, it comes right back, but we don't have that huge quick drop. What happens when you have like a sudden depressurization of the water mains is that you induce failure points through fatigue wear on the pipes. Water mains like to be at a relatively consistent pressure. And obviously when you're cycling from a higher pressure, that's closer to 70, 80 pounds, and you're dropping it to less than 20 over the course of a really short duration, you can create issues in your water system. All right. I just wanted to show you guys those couple of things so you understand a little bit of the hydraulics. If everyone can process those figures, they seem very natural to me, but I'm sure they're probably not natural for everybody else. But
No, they are not.
so that shows you kind of the significance and why hydraulically it's needed in that location. So
Supervisor, can I, Greg, if I could just real quick ask a question directly related to what you just showed. Your engineering report that you just referenced, that exact scenario there, located in zone 1, significant industrial user tests its fire pumps. During the period of record, a significant water break occurred on one of the days the industry tested its fire pumps. On this day, the pressure of the tanks dropped to 24.61. So are we engineering all of this just to the anomaly that a water line break occurred at the same time that Pactiv was doing their tests?
No, because this was trended over an extended period of time. I think it just happened that our data captured that a significant issue.
But your report says results indicate the water system meets the pressure requirements of the recommended standards.
Ooh.
But it says right there, zone 1. Okay, hang on. I guess I'll have to look at this and get back to you. I'm not exactly sure how we stated that it meets the pressure requirements with that significant of an issue in the hydraulic gradient. So,
and it says it in multiple places, just so you're aware. So it talks about the pressure and what it is, and it talks about this anomaly when there was a water main break during also a test. And as I was reading by line every single detail, and it talks about the city reservoirs, it also, even in your preliminary engineering report, it talks about the range and pressures, which is what you were referencing. But it also, this is old data, 2015, prior to any of the improvements that have been done with the new transmission main or even our new boosters tank station. And it also sounds like it's relative to an incident where you had a water main break. And it makes me wonder if the issue is more so a need to replace the water lines than the tank. Because the existing tank is 1 million gallons. The new tank is, 1.2 million. And I get it's the height, right? But I wonder if there's other factors at play here also.
Yeah. Interesting observation, Doug.
Oh, Greg, you're muted. Looks like he's trying to say something.
I apologize. There's an updated report for this. I'm not sure if we have the most recent one, but it did include the study, this little mini study following the PER, where we monitored all those different pressure points. And this fire test occurs, I think, once a week or every other week, because they don't have, Pactiv does not have conventional fire insurance. They're like self-insured. So I think they're compelled to do these regular fire tests. Plus, I mean, obviously Pactiv would be a really significant loss if they did have a fire. But anyways,
means let's spend $13 million to fix Pactiv's problem, or fix a problem that is causing.
But it's not just Pactiv, it's also, the other industry that's in zone 1.
Over the past few days, I've heard a couple of other ideas floated that I think you talked to Doug about one today, Greg. Is there any merit in pursuing those to see what impact they may have on,
Which one are we,
the size of this project and all?
which one are we referring to? Sorry.
I think that was, Greg, you and I had a very, very brief conversation, and Jim and I talked a little bit more about it, but the possibility, if there was a way to loop in Canandaigua Consolidated up here to help with some of these pressure issues.
The Pactive's draw is like around 6,000 gallons a minute. So our ability to supply that volume of water through the Canandaigua Consolidated District, it's just not there. The water, our tanks are several miles away. The appropriate location for fire storage should be in that zone 1. And in addition to, if we try to use Canandaigua Consolidated to supplement any flows, we would have to have some type of pressure reduce because we got to marry up the hydraulic grade lines. That's just another mechanical point that could potentially fail. So yeah, I'm not going to say that it's a complete and total impossibility. I just, the prospect of what you're outlining doesn't sound like it would be very successful.
Well, should it be looked at and evaluated though?
I mean, we could, but I mean, just knowing what that part of the system can supply, it's really going to be a drop in the bucket for what Pactive is looking at in the fire storage and through there. But plus, now you're asking your distribution system for Canandaigua Consolidated to convey significant amount of water into this industrial area, which we're feeding it off a bunch of 8s. I don't know. It's we can study it.
Well, Jim had another thought today too, that I don't know, Jim, you still there? Or?
I'm still here, Terry. I did speak to Greg about the 2 connection points, Buffalo Street Extension and at the city line on 30. And although it's a valid effort to try to help the situation, as Greg mentioned, we just can't get that volume of water through our 2 8-inch lines to come up with that 6,000. It would take, we could do about 1,700 gallons a minute down there in that hydrant. I do know that. So we're only a third of the way there, Terry.
And that's with the system screaming.
Well, one of my biggest concerns too here is we're not just talking about servicing our existing customers, including the largest private employer in Ontario County, but this is the whole MUO and uptown area, which we are really right now pushing growth in that growth node. And I can't see this problem not becoming more exacerbated going forward. And it's all kind of centered around the area where we're planning to put this tower anyway. I mean, that's pretty much right in the heart of where the development we're trying to encourage to happen. So I don't think necessarily looking to go outside that area is going to be beneficial going forward if that's going to always be the real suck of the need in that zone. So
also just want to quickly add, if we try to, take this Brickyard tank and just make it a Farmington tank, we could obviously get away with a much smaller or a much lower tank. So the tank would only need to be probably, around 80 feet tall versus 160 feet tall. So the 160 feet of elevation there helps that zone 1. And then obviously you would just have that transmission main going north to zone 2. But that tank basically creates a second feed point back south. Now, the Pactive demand, it does impact the city of Canandaigua as well on the north end, and I think they know that as well. But they have check valves and all their meters. So, I mean, this tank could be beneficial for the city if the city took out those checks.
We'll let the city help pay for it then.
Right, yeah, that's not
going to happen.
So looking, and I don't know if this question makes sense. I'm a storyteller, not an engineer. But how much water does Pactiv pull when they pull their fire tests?
The system has to be able to meet a 2-hour demand.
So 6,000 gallons a minute for 2 hours.
120,000.
So, I mean, is it unreasonable? Or, I mean, I don't know much of the engineering. Is it unreasonable? If if Pactiv wasn't there, we wouldn't really be having this issue. I mean, we'd have some, but they're the key point. I mean, they're the key, like the kind of like the crux of it all. Would a tank that held that be a viable option? I don't even know. Then it fills slowly and then they have it for their 2-hour fire suppression. And then it comes back in at a more normal rate than 6,000 per minute.
Yeah, I think when we size tanks, we size it off of 2 hours. I guess I'm not gonna be able to speak directly to exactly how much fire storage they would need. That would be, up to their fire suppression consultant.
No, that's on the order of what, 750,000 gallons. 2 hours at 6,000 gallons a minute. So a 1 million gallon tank that would be getting replenished during that period of time would be enough to meet their demand.
And this one we're looking at here is it's already 1 million.
The new tank is 2 million and 1.7, around 1.7 million of that total storage is allocated to roughly fire storage, and 300,000 or so of that is operational storage. Now, the one thing I also want to kind of highlight is a nuance of the design is, there's this big transmission main that's running north, and I think that gives the connotation that, the tank is really there to serve Farmington. We purposely designed it that way because tankage nowadays, you try to avoid having old water. So what we were trying to do is to create a bias in the system to force the water to go through our tank, thereby freshen the water in the tank. Because there's multiple points of feed from zone 1 to zone 2. But what we wanted to do was to kind of force some flow through that tank to keep it as fresh as possible.
Not to put you on the spot, but Karen, did you have any thoughts on this? Brand new town board member. I don't know if you've had a chance to review it all yet, but just didn't want to leave you out.
Well, and I'm sure there's things with Pactiv that their fire suppression, I'm guessing their fire would be more chemical. And a lot of chemical fires you can't fight with water. The draw on that tank just to test the water for a water fire is quite it's a big taxing on that tank. And again, when you spoke of Uptown and the vote, all of this, if there hadn't been all this growth in industry and residential, would that tank and its system still be sufficient? We're going to continue growing and something has to be done. I'm curious about the 1961 agreement. It's over 60 years old. Maybe it has no need for an amendment, but it certainly needs a thorough review by both of the parties involved.
No,
Wasn't that,
Karen, if I
amendment?
can, if you're going to still operate the two water districts jointly, both towns sit down and amend that. Absolutely. And I think Terry alluded to that, and Gary as well.
Right, I understand.
Yeah, I think that's
And when you
provide
said
any
the two
regulation.
districts being operated together, that kind of put it in the perspective as a political map of two areas that function in part separately for other business, but they are now working together to supply water to industry and people and homes and businesses all in this one district. The other side of that is, I think, I don't ever recall a capital project, even in inflationary times, that the price went down and waiting to do it. I just can't imagine it going down. I don't think that's going to happen in today's climate for 5 to 10 years, if at all. What else did I write down? But in the population, and we're trying to encourage all this business, it has to come. I mean, that's the future. The worst part of this is how suddenly it was brought to us and how quickly we are being told we need to act. And how do we act? I don't know.
Has anybody talked to Pactiv at all about this?
Well,
We did have a bunch of meetings with Pactiv. I think before we really got into the design phase. But I think Bill and Derek kind of took the lead on those. I'm not necessarily going to be able to speak exactly to what was discussed.
Can I ask a question? And nobody, Jim and Greg, you might not know the answer, but are they in compliance with the water district rules? Are they allowed to draw that much at one time, absent to test? Most tests are conducted by requirement of the municipality. The county or the town says you got to test your fire suppression equipment X times a year, or you have to have it inspected. If they're doing it for insurance purposes, are they in compliance? Are they allowed to do this? Are districts are allowed to impose rules and regulations?
Yeah, you'd have to look at the water policy, but I don't believe there's a specific agreement for Pactiv.
No, I meant the water policy. Are they in compliance with the towns or the district's water policy?
We would have to review that. I don't know.
I have to review that with Farmington's town board. The reason I say that is I don't believe our policy for consolidated bleeds over to Farmington Canandaigua district. And for years, we've let Farmington handle that policy on their side of North Street. So that might be a question we have to ask. There may have been something when Pactiv got built with, I'm not trying to say the county, but just in general speaking, maybe they said, we need this much water. And they said, yeah, we'll get you the water. And they got the water and here we are. Who knows? That could have been something that was agreed upon. I just want to say I feel the frustration of the town board as far as the financial part of what you're going through. Putting on my water cap, I look at this and I think to myself, how do we almost not have a tank, regardless of Pactiv, replacing that 60-year-old tank and getting the right water in and out of it for this end of the town that will be growing over the next 10 years. That's my water side of thinking of what should be done out here for this tank project.
Well, can I ask a question to Jim and to Greg? Is this improvement, if Pactiv was off the town's water system, would any of these improvements be necessary? Jim just raised the point about future growth. And it seems like we're not clear on that. Is this a Pactiv problem, or are there other issues?
No.
Well, their name certainly comes up frequently.
Pactiv is probably the lightning rod of this whole thing, but you have other industries that have high fire flow demands. They may not test, but you do have the growth and the demand. So, well,
let me rephrase
going back to the reason for that 24-inch that was built so Pactiv could expand. That was part of because that was when I started working with a town myself, not MRB, but that was around 2005, 2006 timeframe when that expansion went in. So I mean, I do remember that 24-inch being run specifically for Pactiv. So I don't think there was any arrangement that says that, well, you can only take this amount. We did look for that though. I remember talking with Derek and Bill about those, whether or not there was an upper limit that said, okay, maybe you can only draw up to 3,500 gallons a minute, but that does not exist. But all that would do is it would change the hydraulics just a little bit. Maybe the severity of the pressure drop wouldn't necessarily be there and so pronounced as it is with that 6,000 gallon a minute draw. But there's still that corridor still has a lot of industry in it that all have high fire flow demands.
So it's industrial fire flow demands that are the reason that this project is needed.
Industrial commercial. I mean, Chris, that like sometimes it depends on what the building is, how it's built, how tall it is, what it needs for actual fire flows.
Why don't you attach a surcharge to any amount over X amount of gallons? That way you hit that way the cause of the problem can help pay back the debt.
Well, didn't we talk about
Meters.
altering the charge based on the size service, like the 2-inch, 4-inch, 8-inch, 12-inch?
I think you can do that as well.
Good.
Charge for commercial meters.
Charge for commercial use as well.
I'm not sure. I mean, Pete might know. Do you guys have is Pactiv a wholesale user? Pete still there?
No, they're not a wholesale user, but they, once they go through the minimum threshold for the, 6, 8, or 12-inch line, because they have more than 1 meter. Once they go through that threshold, they actually go up in price. They went from 415 to 460, and now it will be 445 to 490 per 1,000 gallon.
So there is a scale for the heavier users.
Why not go from 4 to 8?
Yeah.
48 watt.
Per 1,000?
Yeah, why not over, over X gallons per minute, it's $8 per 1,000.
Yeah, so I'm just looking up the fee here now. So a 6-inch meter size, the minimum gallons that we charge for the per quarter is 0 to 80,000, or excuse me, 0 to 160,000 for a 6-inch. That's works out to $712. And then you'd have to take that by 160,000 plus. If they use 300,000 gallons, that difference is then charged at $490 per 1,000. And that's whether like a home, a residential that has a 3/4 or a 1-inch, their minimum gallons a quarter is 6,000, and so they pay the $445 here in 2022, and then when they go over that 6,000, it also jumps up for a residential to $490.
Those differences aren't really all that great.
Yeah, 8 to 12-inch minimum build quarter is 200,000 gallons at $890, and then again it's $490. I'm kind of interested to see what the city Canandaigua what we actually settle on, because the letter is due here in February. But I mean, the top end for our commercial, we could add the per gallon rate. We could raise that, or we could go to the meter charge for commercial. I think I mentioned the other night, I think we have like 224 commercial accounts in meters from all, all different sizes, 2 inches and up.
I think it makes sense to have there be a meter charge on the commercial meters, just to help, since that seems to be the big draw here. And they're obviously very different users than your average residential user.
But so if I can kind of summarize a little bit and jump in whenever anybody else wants to. A lot of ideas, a lot of things have kind of thrown out here. We've agreed that there needs to be something done with the tank, whether it include, whether PACT is there or not. I mean, the tank's 60 years old. They have a finite life. That area is looking at a heavy amount of growth, irrespective of PACT being there. We need to look at the agreement. And bottom line, I think, the whole, elephant in the room kind of is, where do we go forward? Do we go forward operating 2 separate districts jointly? Is it time to look at that whole agreement and decide, do we stay together? Do we split? I mean, I think that's what people are kind of walking around, and I don't, you never plan on that, but I don't know if this is something pushing us in that direction. For each municipality to have the autonomy with the different needs that they have. So I don't know what the answer is. I'd be looking for more input with that. I mean, I think the financials that we got in the beginning, as far as the tax rate, I think, as far as I'm concerned, I'm more comfortable with those numbers where they are, and looking at the background between the numbers and how those numbers were arrived. They might even be better with other sources of revenue, like an increased rate to the heavy industrial users. But I guess I'm looking for input, kind of where we are.
Well, I think the numbers are certainly better than what we initially thought. You're correct there, Jared, and that's great. And the growth in the future, I mean, we all believe that there's going to be a lot of growth in our uptown area. One of the things I find odd, though, is that all the problems are in Zone 1, but yet Zone 1 is in Canandaigua, but yet we're not the people driving the train here. And
So
that concerns me. So
that's where it comes to, and I know, Pete, I think you're going to jump into it. That's where it comes to. Maybe it's time to look at management of the districts and how we manage them going forward. So then each municipality has autonomy, because we have very different needs in each of our spots too. Needs going forward.
And that's a valid point, Jared. I do want to jump in just real quick. Regardless of who manages what side of the district, that's for the municipalities to sort out. But the one thing I do want to make a point of, with that, the split on the assessment being like 80-20, if the town of Canandaigua wanted to solve the problem of the pressure and available fire flow issues on their own, as you look at this $13 million project, you'd have to solve that problem for less than $2.6 million. I don't think that's in the cards, but so I do think it's as much as 13 million is a huge burden for both districts. 2.6 of it, and actually it's technically less because 3 point whatever is grants. So I didn't factor that in, but just kind of keep that in mind, is like, that's how you'd solve this problem. I still think the tank is in the best interest of the town, regardless of who ends up running the Canandaigua side of Canandaigua Farmington Water District. That's just my opinion, looking at the data here and the information that I have.
Why is it in the interest of Farmington?
I'm sorry, say that again.
what was
Why
that?
is it you said it's in the interest of the town of Canandaigua. Why would Farmington be interested in doing this?
I think because they administer the district, so that's why they're doing the tank.
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak when Ted was there, but when I took over as supervisor, I don't look at, this as us and them. I look at it as a district, and I rely on Jim Crane when he was there, David DeGear, and now Robin McDonald and his staff. I rely on them. Okay, what needs to be fixed? Where are we having water breaks? You know, what equipment do you need over the next 7 years? You know, we do that on the sewer side too, but you know, I would just like to say that, you know, our books are audited every year. We also do the New York State AUD is a separate report on the water district, goes to New York State also, and those are on file. I'm open to any kind of meetings with the town on the operation. We meet every Tuesday morning that we have a town board meeting. Town of Victor has a representative sits there with us, either on Zoom or in person for the sewer side, because we do the maintenance on the sewer system in the town of Victor. And again, somebody is welcome to sit in on our meetings. In the same way with the budget sessions, we start the budget in June or July timeframe, and somebody can sit through that project process as we progress with it. I'm open to anything. I just, to me, it's one district, legally or not, and just that's the way we have to operate, because the budget pays for the whole district the way it's set up now.
From my perspective, I mean, if we can base our considerations off these new numbers that we were given on Monday, I mean, the rate's not even going up 10%. And that is somehow paying for essentially $8 million of work here after the grants. And that, I mean, I'm of the opinion that I think we should move forward with it, because like Karen had said, it's unlikely this is going to be going down anytime soon. And, I'm feeling a lot more comfortable with it now that we've really kind of gone through these figures than I was on Monday. And I think it's probably going to be beneficial for the future of a region that both of us are anticipating a lot of growth in across the entire water district. So I'm thankful to Supervisor Inglesby for helping answer those questions. And it's a great way to dive into how budgets work for a brand new town board member. So thanks.
Sure, no problem, anytime.
And I would add also, when Supervisor Inglesby and I spoke, that the projections are, as far as on the uptown growth side, they are conservative. So there's a chance that growth will help reduce some of the overall numbers and the overall burden per household, per user, as the assessed value increases. Going forward with a tank, would that preclude us from administering separately if it came to that point down the road where we were
I don't
deciding
think
to
so.
administer the districts separately? I don't know the answer to that. I'm the new guy here.
Shouldn't.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty sure you could still separate the two districts. I mean, obviously you'd probably want to identify exactly what it would take to do
Right.
that, but
So hang on, guys.
I mean,
When there's joint debt, you have to operate jointly. I believe. I will look into that.
Okay.
But the research I've done in the past on this issue, not obviously related to Farmington, was that you can't separate until the debt's paid off. And that's why 1960 or 1961 intermunicipal agreement says this agreement will last until the debt's paid off. That's why they did those, was to pool the resources and operate jointly, and be able to separate with joint debt. I'm not certain that this is joint debt, but I think it is.
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's a
that
legal
would be
question.
a
I'm
lot-
just saying engineering wise, it doesn't preclude us, the tank doesn't preclude us from separating the districts
Okay.
if it comes to that.
And I'm not saying it will, but I know that's been expressed as a concern. And I don't want to shut the door on that if there are people that are concerned about that going forward. I think that's something that should be, as long as it can be, Chris, depending on what you come back with, and if Greg, you're saying it's still doing this, doesn't shut the door on that for those who are concerned with that going forward. I think that's good to know.
Let me clarify. I think what you can operate separately, you can't administer separately. Still need to set your rates jointly, and the boards still have to, essentially concur on issues of administration and governance. So, you may be able to separate out a little bit. Either way, I think the 1961 agreement doesn't really offer either town much benefit and needs to be updated, to reflect the current, current situation, as opposed to when district was invented, when the water was first constructed there in the 60s. And I did also want to clarify, Supervisor Inglesby, I didn't want to imply that your management hasn't been anything but great. I'm impressed that you were able to pull the numbers together, and I think the town is just exploring options. Obviously, you've been doing a great job managing the district for the past 60 plus years.
I think it's kind of incumbent upon.
Frozen.
Froze.
You're frozen.
I would think that it would be to our advantage, though, that as we experience growth in the uptown area, that we don't have to send people to Farmington to find out what they have to do to get water. That should be in our own
And we
house.
and I think, we can look at I think definitely coming out of this, the first thing that we've got to do is set up a time in a workshop, set up a time to meet and look at that 61 agreement. And Supervisor, I don't think Mr. Nadler was implying that you've been administering that district since 1961.
Hope not.
Only Terry's old enough to.
But
no one's throwing stones at anybody here, but I do think that it sounds, though, from what Chris is saying, that you can't change. If we take on this debt, then that agreement is going to stay in force unless you change the agreement prior to taking on the debt.
No, that's not true. That agreement related to debt taken on in 1961. Actually, I think it was 1964 when the debt was actually taken on.
So we could say yes to this project, then come up with an agreement after the fact.
Yes, it would still be a joint water district. Hang on, you would still have to mutually agree on rates. I think there's reporting requirements that would have to be done jointly. Hang on, I can tell you. Expenses would have to be shared and pooled. It dawns on me that you could probably still be a joint water district, but operate separately. You raised the concern, Canandaigua residents shouldn't have to be going to Farmington Town Hall to, deal with their water supplier.
Right, exactly.
We can craft an intermunicipal agreement that addresses that says Canandaigua will send the bills and do the work for their side, and Farmington will do, deal with their residents. We can craft an intermunicipal agreement. And I think, Supervisor Inglesby said very early in this meeting, he's open to anything. He wants to work together. And I think that's, exactly what both towns need. And, for tonight, I don't see any bars.
Yeah, that could fix a lot of the problem too, if we could do that. I mean, because I know it's easier for us to wrap our heads around it, but it's hard for somebody coming in and saying, well, what do you mean I don't deal with you guys for my water?
Right.
Like, well, because you don't, because you live on that side. So it might, I'd definitely think we need to have that as item one coming out of this. You know, we approve this going forward, item one, to kind of look at that and come up with a new agreement.
Yeah, Chris, what you might be talking about to split the debt of the tank is do like an Article 12C, which I believe is like a tank district. We're semi-familiar with this because we're working on this regional tank for the county in Wayne County. Just something to kind of take a look at.
Quiet pause.
Crickets.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
I tried to,
Anybody?
one last thing, Jared, and maybe everybody get a little chuckle out of it, but I tried to give Jim Fletcher a couple of years ago my whole billing system and do it for me, and he said, no, thanks. So
You got those crappy meters of Farmington.
Oh, what do you really?
If he wants to manage this thing.
How do you really feel, Jim?
I don't like their meters.
And don't forget that district's got a fair amount of cast iron still in it.
So I think, welcome back, Adeline. You kind of glitched. You got into the dead zone for a second.
Sorry.
Is it fair to say that we might be at a good spot right now to wrap up our discussion?
Did I miss anything?
Just that we can go forward with, we're gonna look at the intermunicipal agreement and try to recraft that and make it easier for residents and have it, see how we can, if we can keep billing on each side of the district. So Canandaigua residents pay at Town Hall, and Canandaigua Town Hall and Farmington residents pay at the Farmington Town Hall. Things like that to kind of look at the and look at that agreement and work it.
Well, more than that, that the people that want to come into the town of Canandaigua and build, come and ask the town hall, what do I have to do?
Yes.
You know, how do I get water service? And, you know, that's our purview then. And we take care of our people, Farmington takes care of theirs, whether they be residential or commercial or whatever.
Right. And I think that could do a lot going forward with some of the concerns that I've heard tonight. All right, anybody else have any questions or comments? Issues that have not been resolved? I mean, about this.
Motion to adjourn.
We can't get there yet, Terry. Terry, you jumped. And I'm trying to move all you guys down so I don't see you, so I can see the agenda, because I can't find mine.
Got a privilege of the floor.
All right, so that takes us to the next privilege of the floor. Is there anyone who would like to be heard? And I can actually see all the participants right now, so I can see hands, but I don't see any hands going up. All right, seeing no hands. We do not have any requested executive sessions at this time. With that said, I appreciate everybody for chiming in. Thank you, residents, for joining us. I know that water tanks and water talk are riveting topics, and you have other ways you could have spent your Thursday night and other TV shows, but we appreciate you joining in and watching us here. Thank you, Supervisor Inglesby, for your work on this and coming back with the updated numbers and being willing to go through all the steps with us. Greg, thank you for being here and sharing your expertise as well. And Chris, likewise. So that said, Terry, I believe you said something a minute or two ago that you might want to repeat.
You're right on, Chris.
No, you're supposed to.
I can't
Motion
repeat
to
what you just
adjourn.
texted, so.
All right, so we have a motion to adjourn. Can I have a second?
Second.
All right, thank you, Karen. So made by Adeline second time and Karen second. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
All right, thank you, everybody. We will be back doing this again Monday night. That will have a resolution on the table, so there will be action taken at that meeting. So it can be taken prior to Farmington's board meeting the following evening.
So as a new board member, have we ever had 3 town board meetings in 7 days before? Or is that just for this year?
Been a while.
You know, but maybe back in the 80s, I don't know, before we kept records, not by Zoom or not remotely or in person, not virtually.
I just have a request. Please don't make this a habit.
Good point.
I'll second that, Jean.
All right, we at least will only do it every other month, okay, Jean?
Hey.
No, no.
Yeah, I think there'd be pitchforks if we did that. Coming from Jean and Jim. You know, and Doug would have to come back from New York City to come after us again. So, all right, well, thank you, everybody. With that, I will adjourn the meeting, and thank you. Have a great evening. Stay safe, stay warm, and we'll see you guys.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, good night.
Good night, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Right.